Nischal Maheshwari, CEO of Institutional Equities at Centrum Broking, is joining us this morning. Nischal, very good morning to you. What is the call at Centrum, and what's your own prognosis of what is happening in the markets currently? We're sub 12,000 now on the index. Primary factors driving this kind of skepticism, obviously, being the global impact of coronavirus. But what is it that you're going to be watching out for?
Morning. I think market is underestimating the impact of coronavirus, and I think they have started slowly realizing it when companies have started coming out as warnings. It was Apple yesterday. I think day before yesterday it was locally Hero Honda, which said that their production is going to get impacted. A few days back, I think Hyundai closed its plant in Korea. So I think it's a much wider basically impact that the world is now started seeing. I am very sure basically I think this current quarter is going to be impacted across the board basically for all the companies which are anything to do with the global supply chain. So those things I think the market and the world is now started looking out for. So I think that's where the sentiments are. Locally I think Boda's expected demise, I think that once again raises the question basically saying that long established businesses are getting disrupted in this new environment. So I think people, that's why people are cautious.
So do you then think, Nischal, while Q3 was a probably flat quarter in terms of earnings, expectations before coronavirus were that there would be some recovery in Q4, pressure built up on Q4 earnings, but that might also not follow through, and therefore the full year earnings growth will look that much more weaker?
Q4 will be okay basically because most of the people would be having some amount of inventory because it was Chinese New Year and people do build up inventories. Basically my interaction with most of the companies make us believe that I think everybody seems to be okay till March, but I think this is now going beyond March, very sure I think. So that's why in anticipation that the coming quarter, not the current quarter but the coming quarter will have its impact. So typically it takes around 35 to 40 days from a cargo leaving Chinese factory to arrive at an Indian factory. And if you have got 3 weeks now, China is closed, maybe another week or two, it will be closed and there slowly it will pick up. I think that impact will happen in the next quarter. We have already started seeing prices going up. If you're not in this kind of environment where you do not have pricing power, to pass on costs would be very difficult for anybody. So I think profitability and sales both will be impacted next quarter. Yes, earnings will be impacted next quarter.
This is very important, Nischal. So we are looking at the economy not really blooming, and we have this technical issue, and not just for India, world over as well. Would you reckon that we might have a challenge up until the festive season comes up, because there might be a spate of periods, or this a series of periods wherein we might get bad news either on earnings, or if this coronavirus issue gets extended for beyond March, as we all expect, and we don't know how much it will come, and maybe global companies and global economy too going through that. So the possibility of good news is far lesser than the possibility of bad news, and therefore would it mean that markets might actually continue to languish broadly?
So I think markets would be mostly polarized, and that's what is going to happen. So yes, it will just keep on moving in a very narrow range, but largely in stocks basically which we've seen in the last year, 1 year doing well, I believe that at least for the next 6 months that seems to be right. So all the calls on recovery in mid caps and recovery in small caps, I don't think so that's happening in a hurry. That's been my view, remains, and it continues to remain. And domestically, till we have this liquidity sorted out, I do not believe basically that the mid caps and small caps are doing very well, because they are the last guys to stand in the queue as far as liquidity is concerned. And if you are not able to get liquidity, basically I don't think so you can do much in this market basically. So I think large cap is once again is going to be more focused on the large caps.
No, that's a pertinent point, and I think the last 10 days, we've had more days of negative market breadth than positive market breadth, and underperformance from the mid caps compared to the large caps. So, I mean, the point is very well made. Nischal, how have you analyzed the moves taken to ease some amount of liquidity and the resultant impact on NBFCs? Now, we know the first string of NBFCs, they are untouched, they are doing well, yes, but some of the others have some aid from the Reserve Bank and the moves around liquidity, and some of them have, like for example, we have this story on a BloombergQuint website which speaks about how Piramal has moved over from largely real estate to some bit of retail in order to get borrowings at a lower cost from global bond investors as well, and that is helping the company. Do you think a select set of string 2 NBFCs might maybe benefit a little and might find investor interest?
It's very difficult at the moment. I don't think so there is much happening. I've heard several calls basically in this current quarter. Yes, there is liquidity, but there is this fear basically which still continues to remain. So I think people who are I think the system is awash with liquidity, but the case of taking calls or taking more risk is not there. So I think a risk aversion still continues to be very, very strong. So you talk to any of the NBFCs, basically most of them have actually degrown their books. And in that kind of a scenario, I'm talking about the wholesale guys. So in that kind of a scenario, basically, I don't see this improving in a hurry. So at least I was on a call of a few of these companies. They're talking about next 1 or 2 quarters. They don't see any strong visibility. We have not the sector which is most stressed, which is real estate. I don't think government has given any sops as far as this current budget is concerned. So I don't see any liquidity improving out there. So yes, some of these guys will move into retail, but it's very, very marginal. You are saying on a base of 105%, they able to sell their assets down and move into retail, which is fine basically, but it doesn't move the needle. So I don't see there is anything happening in a hurry.
Okay, Nischal, what's your assessment of the telecom space now? All 3 of them have started to cough up the money and start depositing part of the AGR dues. What do you think is going to happen now, and what are the prospects for some of the larger players? Do you feel that it's going to primarily continue, and the thought process of this becoming a duopoly is moving in the right direction?
So as far as the consumer is concerned, I would have wanted 3 of them, but I believe now I only think 2 will survive, and the third survives also. I think it will be a very, very small marginal player. So I think this is good time for both Reliance and Bharti.
Okay. Nischal, there is I'm not asking you to comment on specific names, but there's a large restructuring that has been announced in a media entity. That sector has been in doldrums. Do you reckon that these technical issues notwithstanding, it's best to avoid, because if the economy is anyways not really looking like going up, then ad rates by and large will not necessarily pick up?
I agree with your analysis basically. I think this is more of a consolidation specifically which I see within that whole thing. There is some cash which is lying around in the 2 cable companies. I think that needs to be utilized in some other way. So, and if you look at Network 18, it had got a large debt. So I think this consolidation is actually trying to bring down debt in the group. I don't see any other thought process behind this. Because historically, and one, I am not very sure basically whether this consolidation will be allowed, because I think that 20% of a broadcaster having more than 20% in distribution company also, that I believe the law is still there. So we have to see how the whole thing goes through. But I believe that this is largely a consolidation thing, nothing that they are trying to create or maybe just trying to create a bigger entity.
Okay. Got that. Nischal, it was great chatting with you this morning. Thank you so much for joining in.